18th, 2023. This is a special session of Commissioners Court, and we will be taking action on an item today. So just giving everybody a heads up, it's a little out of the ordinary. Also going to be kind of going all around the agenda because we've got different folks who need to be here at different times, and so let's all just fly this plane together. So we're going to start with item number 2, which is discuss and review jail maintenance projects and work orders. Chief, what you got?
No major problems. That's a good thing. We're still waiting on some camera quotes from Cornerstone from this summer that we've been back and forth on. The detention briefing room where those walls have gotten scratched up, Briggles is going to come and put a border on that wall.
Is that meeting room where
Yeah.
Mike meeting?
So they should be out next week or two.
Wainscot border or
It'd be a
parallel?
wainscot, yeah. It'd be kind of like a Formica material, 18 inches wide, that will go around that whole classroom. So that should alleviate that scratching problem, scuffing problems.
Yeah,
And
yeah, it doesn't look good.
no, we were working on getting it fixed. Other than that, they had 25 work orders that they caught up on last week, and there's nothing past due, so. Just PM work and stuff.
Okay. Any questions or issues with that item?
Did we ever get all those, whatever stains off the floor in the lobby and particularly the men's restroom area?
In where now?
Like the men's restroom and in the lobby, there was all those, like tar or something stains all over the
As far as I know, you talking about just on the tile?
Yeah, on the tile.
I think that's all being, it just wasn't getting cleaned good.
Was it getting cleaned?
Yeah.
Okay.
I will go back and look at it this
I
afternoon.
haven't been out there.
I don't even go out that way usually, or that right, to that restroom.
All right. Any other questions, comments? All right, item number 3 is receive status report on salaries and overtime. Believe Corey, you sent that packet out on
Wednesday.
Corey,
Wednesday at 11:30.
Corey, did you ever get a response from Commissioner Fincannon? I forwarded that email like 20 times. Mickey, will this time work that works for Corey? Crickets.
That's calling it out on
And I guess that gives you the answer.
Brendan, we need to take a look at Commissioner Fincannon's email. And make sure he's getting, he doesn't have Commissioner Watts blocked.
Gonna be one of those kind of days.
In case anyone didn't find it, Wednesday at 11:30.
I did find it.
What's Wednesday?
Did Commissioner Fincannon get his notice of lunch today? Did that come through?
Housing, it doesn't matter what she does anymore, you know, talking and see if you know somebody to send it to. But I don't
Judge, were you fully aware what you were signing up for when you did that?
know that.
Not quite. That's a good answer. That's a good
I
answer.
think that it falls under her compliance.
Any illusions I had about thinking I had stuff together and knew what was
Yeah,
going on,
yeah.
clearly,
I told him when he got elected, I said, I'm glad you've got a good sense of humor, considering who you're gonna be sitting with. Jail numbers look pretty steady. Do we
Yeah.
go up when the weather gets cold or
Not as much as it does in the
when
summer.
hot? Okay.
We were at 516 this morning.
Hmm.
516.
We've been hovering around 530, so it's down just a little bit.
How's our staffing?
Still 18 short. And we did a job fair, I think the week before last. We have no applications working right now.
Hmm.
Wow.
Do we
You
have,
saw,
do we have many in our county now? I know we got a few that are,
Allen County?
yeah, special ills or,
They're all here.
are you heavy on state needing to pick up?
Not that I'm aware of, no.
You saw the article from Harris County.
Yeah.
Shocking, isn't
Send them all down to see Billy Joe McAllister.
it? Yeah.
Hey, Will, I don't know if you know the answer to this, but the Odyssey reports that I get never match the numbers you say. It showed 485 this morning on the report I got. And I haven't had over 500 in days. And I'm not saying you're mistaken, I'm saying I don't know where because I never have as many as you said.
So some of that, and it's not very few, but if we have one or two or five at state hospital, those have to count as beds. Inmates too, because those beds are.
And those aren't gonna be
And they're not gonna be on the Odyssey report.
Yeah.
Okay,
It's still, it's an Odyssey report through shift submissions,
I got you.
so,
I just wanna make sure that
Yeah.
those are on,
Yeah.
because it's never quite what you say.
but I go off what's sent to me.
No, I
each
got you.
morning, so-
I believe you
And
100%.
usually, we don't have more than half a dozen. I don't
Gotcha.
think we even have that many right now at state hospital.
Yeah. See, I think I'm pretty sure this morning showed me 485, but I figured it had to be at the point of when a shift was changing or something, and maybe you got people arrested after the
No,
report started.
they
taking
lock
in.
everything down 30 minutes prior to and 30 minutes after the shift, and they do hit count, and it's got to match.
Gotcha.
So,
Okay, I
I'll
just
find
wanted
out
to check.
more about
Okay, I
that.
just wanted to check.
Okay.
Thank you.
So for your purposes, folks out at the state hospital for competency restoration, you still have to come?
Yes, because they're a bed space. Because they can come back in.
Because assuming the state hospital releases them, you
They
have to have a
bed.
spot for them.
Yeah.
Corey, I noticed that the last two pay periods in the jail overtime in that section didn't have any total non-working hours in the total. Was that just a decision made for, on your end, was there none? I'm just curious. You know what I'm talking about?
I'm not really sure where the.
So, to go to page 37, for example,
Mhm.
and the gray row, total non-working hours, vacation,
Oh,
sick, et
okay,
cetera.
that's me. I did not notice that was added to the thing.
Okay.
I do know for this pay period, it was, 827, 827.50 for this pay period.
Okay. And would that affect that amount in the total salary row right below it, if that were added? Okay.
Well, not the total salary, it would affect the cost per working hour.
Okay. Everyone had a chance to look through it all?
Yep.
Okay. Any questions, comments on salaries and overtime? All right, we'll go to item number 4, which is review and discuss regular bills.
Margaret, were you able to change that?
I did, I
ARPA?
resent that last report to you guys. The rest of them came at 8:03 on Wednesday, and I don't
Okay.
remember, I'm sorry, the exact time I sent that final ARPA report, but it was
Okay.
in the afternoon.
Okay,
And there I noted that there was no report for precinct 5 anymore.
okay.
Yeah, so you've got the big list at 8:03 on Wednesday, and then she sent an ARPA corrected list at 4:20 in the afternoon on Wednesday. What are in that ARPA corrected list, the expressway Conoco
That's the fuel for taking the rock to the tower project.
or the tower project?
That's what the correction was, because the receipts were marked precinct 5. So they originally were put on precinct 5, and then when I got the email from Debbie and Jeff, I took them out of 5, put them in ARPA.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Jeff, thank you, and Debbie for
You
catching that
bet.
as well. What is the Dell marketing?
Do you know what fund you're looking at? Are you looking at the general fund?
General, yeah.
Is it
For,
not Brandon's Apple stuff, is it? Is that any?
I wouldn't think they'd go through Dell marketing.
No.
I mean, where can I say? That says it's a Dell Latitude and Dock. Let me look at that.
Yeah, I think their corporate name is Dell Marketing LLP or something.
Okay.
Yeah, it's just that's actually something for the sheriff's office, because it looks like it's coming out of DCIF, the Detention Improvement Fund.
Okay.
I just don't know what this is, but that mobile phone in Texas, the land and buildings, what is that?
Through
Jail, that's a jail expense, 64,000, there's 116,000, 148,000.
Oh,
Mobile
those
phone
were,
in Texas,
yeah, give me a second, I'll get the corridor pulled up and I'll tell you.
I just don't remember what it's.
Yeah.
What it is. It's large, phone bill.
Yeah, there's, all 3 of them were on the corridor together, I just don't remember, I apologize, off the top of my
it
head.
was related to radios,
What's
but
her
I
radio?
don't remember
Yeah.
the precise.
That was- okay, now I kinda remember. He was here. That was an upgrade that he came to court and presented.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
One was equipment, one was like update the tower.
Yep.
Radios on tower.
Yep.
Something like
Yep.
that.
Okay, it is, they're all for to approve the following Mobile phone of Texas quotes for radios, GPS, and alarms for the LEC to be paid out of LEC bond funds. And there were about 5 of them in that. It's from April 19th. The 2022 actually is when it was approved, but it takes forever to get
It's
there.
different than what we were thinking of. Because that was for
His
their
original-
outside
His
towers.
original one was approved, and he came back to court and presented and needed to upgrade or change the amount.
I thought that was on the tower.
Yeah, that was on our outside towers, not the LEC, not jail related stuff.
Yeah, that's the tower. The ARPA tower.
Did you see his email this morning? He's gonna show the new guy. He's gonna show the new guy. He's just waiting. Guess that's up to him. Yeah, it's gonna be, it's really got walls for the wall. Until someone figures it out. Is that next week's? That's the new one. Policy. Section. 6, page 17.
Cheryl, on the LPPF, why do we run a cash balance after we make the payment? Are we not doing that every
It's a
quarter?
draft.
It's a drag.
The state's managing it.
Yeah, but
right?
we run it through on a list and then we void the check and then it processes through. Because we have to write a check in order to capture the amount and take it out on the books.
But they're giving you the amount.
They
to-
give us the amount, it's not.
Why do they not collect the full amount that we collect?
That's a good question.
They pull it randomly and whatever drives them to give us that number, I have no rhyme or reason to why they do that. Yeah.
We just.
It's weird.
Looks strange.
I get an email from Matt Gilbert that says they would like X amount of dollars and by this date and
It must be, they're submitting their payment and it must be way in arrears from,
Yeah.
how they're drafted. That's the best
that
I can
one's never
figure.
made
That's
any
way too
sense,
much
Okay.
money.
I just wondering, it just didn't look.
it's weird because sometimes it's a higher number and sometimes it's less.
So we figured we would remit what we collect every time.
No.
Minus the 20.
Yeah, they call us for whatever amount they want and then we just hold
Okay.
it until they call.
I think we throw logic out the window when it comes to
Uh-huh.
Yeah, the whole
One of you that
is
silliness
not
going
logical.
around.
Yeah.
The good thing is that maybe if the LPPF ever changes and they quit, the state may not even know.
They may not.
I doubt that very much. Everyone had a chance to look through bills. Any questions? Okay. Let's move on to item number 5, which is discussions on the Wichita County purchasing policy. So I apologize, I did not send this out to everyone until this morning, so you, commissioners, you should have this in your email from me at 9:24. This is not intended to be a go-through page-by-page discussion today. What I wanted to do was revisit this issue after our initial conversation about it back in the spring, talk through the modifications that have been made to address the biggest points of concern that commissioners brought up at that time. From a timeline standpoint, I'd like for us to have this conversation today. Give everybody time over the next week. You get mad at your relatives and in-laws that are with you at Thanksgiving, you can pull out the purchasing manual, look it over. Give everybody plenty of time to read through it and then put it on the agenda for action and more discussion if it's necessary on the Monday after Thanksgiving, so November 27th. And you'll notice, one of the first things you'll notice when you see it, the effective date on it is January 1st, 2024. And the idea there was also, A, give time for everybody, again, to get fully comfortable with it. If you're driving down the road or you think of something that might come up over the next month that triggers a, hey, we need to discuss this or think about this, give plenty of time on that as well. So, I just wanted to lay out the timeline to make sure you all knew got time to look it over and get comfortable with it. So I wanted to lay this out. My goal in initially working with the auditor's office on this document back in the spring, and then especially as we have worked on it since then, was really to do two main things. One was to ensure to the greatest extent possible that we're being good stewards of taxpayer money. I think we already are, but as something I've said commonly in a host of issues since taking office, I think you can always look at how you get better. And so, we want to make sure we're being good stewards of taxpayer money, which means getting the best price and quality of goods and services that we obtain, but also doing it in a timely manner. If you can get a little bit better price on something, but it takes 6 months to do, I have to wonder if that's ineffective, if that actually is being a good steward. The second thing was to provide assistance to elected officials and department heads for obtaining those items at best value so that we could be the best possible stewards. Now, I'm going to talk about this a little bit when we get into one of the sections that was changed, but I know commissioners brought this up last time. There's some areas where subject matter expertise is probably going to be centered in the department. IT is a great example of that. For y'all, road and bridge stuff is a good example of that. And I know there were some concerns about the ability of the subject matter expert to have a say and a part in making the acquisition. It was never the intent to take that over, but obviously because of the confusion that was brought up in the spring, there was confusion that wasn't worded well, and that's on me. And so when we talk about the modification, you'll see that the subject matter expert still has the ability to be the one that goes out, gets the quote, figures out what is necessary for it. So that's in there. The goal here was to help provide assistance to making that possible. So if you've got a quote that you want the help of someone to go out and get, the office of the purchasing agent is there to help you. There's another kind of big item of consideration that hangs over this, which is if we are to adopt this manual, this is not establishing the position of a county purchasing agent as statute outlines it in Local Government Code 262. That would be a separate decision that the court could or could not make at any time. This is establishing parameters around the position of a purchasing agent, both now while it resides in the county auditor's office, and if we choose to in the future establish that position for it to go over and already have a framework built in for that purchasing agent to work under. I would like us to seriously look at adopting that position as we're statutorily allowed to do next year. And just so y'all know,
Next year is in 24 or 25?
24.
Okay.
Then just so you know, there's two different ways that works in statute for a county our size. The one I'm going to suggest we do is that position, if we establish it, serves at the pleasure of the Commissioner's Court. It's like our other department heads that ultimately answer to the court. They take on the duties that are outlined for a purchasing agent in 262, and they also take over, and I quote this from the statute, any administrative function of the county auditor in regard to county purchases and contracts, as well as bidding. In my mind, if we were to do that, it's sort of like what we did with the elections administrator. Cheryl and her office have enough to do on the county auditor side. Taking the purchasing side, which is another full-time, multi-person role, out of that and making it its own separate thing that obviously works hand in hand with that office, frees them up to focus on the other aspects of that job and puts it under a new office. That's strictly what they're doing. And ultimately, it's accountable to the Commissioner's Court. Since we have to make the decisions about money and where it goes and how it's spent, it makes sense to me that rather than a board of judges, which is the other way that you can establish the position, it being accountable to us would make sense. None of that's what we're talking about today, but I did want y'all to have that in the back of your mind. As you're reading the manual and you read about 262, that's a separate
So do we
discussion.
have anything set aside in the budget to do that?
It would transfer
Transfer
from
That won't
the
cut
funds.
my budget. You will have to establish a new office with money that won't have any effect on my budget or my office.
No, yeah, sorry, that was a,
That's,
we would treat it like it's it would come out of the contingencies or 409. We'd have to do a separate thing.
Yes.
okay, that was my question
Yeah.
earlier, is it 24 or 25? 'Cause
Okay.
I don't remember us doing anything.
No,
in the
we
budget.
didn't put anything in the budget for it in 24, so it would be it would come out of 409 or something like that. So, with all that said, I'm gonna turn it. Margaret just got back from a purchasing conference. She just had a couple of things that she wanted to lay out that I thought would be good for us to hear before I hit the big points of modification that were made in this document.
Yeah, 'cause that
Sorry. Tana and I went to the TXPA conference in Denton this past week, and it was an excellent conference. We learned a lot. Of all the conferences I've ever been to in all the years, almost 25 years of work for the county, is probably the best one I've ever been to. I got a lot of feedback from other purchasing people who are willing to help. They all say they started in the same spot we were in. You know, their auditor was doing it. They had to build a policy and go on, so on and so forth. So I found out lots of things. Some of it y'all may know, some of it you may not. I found out some people that were on the buy board that I didn't know were on the buy board that we do business with. I found out that there's an opportunity for us to actually make money cash back if we change the way we do some of the ways we do things. Some of these counties and cities are making $40,000 and $50,000 a year, but we have to establish the policy first, and then it would be another piece of the policy, and kind of, it's a living document. We'd have to kind of change how we do things. But there was just a ton of information that I think that we are not aware of because we simply don't have the time to be full in all purchasing because we're trying to do our other job as well. So I just wanted to let y'all know that I thought it was a really good thing. I would highly suggest whoever you pick, if you do pick, you always send them to that. I have tons of business cards. I met a man from Owl Park who is the purchase person in Denton, Scott Arledge. He lives in Owl Park, but he is the in charge of purchasing in Denton. He's, of course, I'm a Wichita County person. I'm more than willing to help you with anything you want to be helped with. Every question I asked during a session sparked a lot of talk, and by the time the session was over with, I usually had 4 or 5 people in line waiting to talk to me and, hey, how can I help you do whatever you need to do? So it's a very good community, for lack of a better word. I had no idea because I'd never been to any type of purchasing thing, but that was a good resource to go through, and I just wanted to let y'all know that there is lots of support for whoever may be chosen. If they want to reach out and do that, there's lots of different things we can look at.
Margaret, when you're saying buy board, do you mean buy board or do you mean a purchasing co-op of some sort?
I mean, I didn't know Southern Tire Mart was on the buy board.
But when you say buy board, I know that as a brand of
Just one co-op.
Yeah, it's just
there's
like,
multiple co-ops.
yes.
but what I've experienced is that in checking recently, they're pulling away from buy board because the fee to do business with buy board is very expensive compared to
The
now
co-ops.
other things that are developing.
And there's
out
a
there.
ton of co-ops that we could become a part of that I don't even know all about because they're everywhere. But when you do that, I was telling the judge, I'm not trying to step on anybody's toes, but you know, we talked about the bidding process and how we bid, and everybody was like, "Oh Lord, I don't know how you get anybody to bid. You know, one person gets toilet paper, one person gets rolled paper towels," and one of the guys told me, he said, "I go with a co-op." He said, "I pay a little bit more from the get-go, and I know it, but they can't raise their price all year long, and I'm stuck at that price because we had the same thing." And nowadays people don't want to even bid for 3 months because you don't know what the prices are going to be.
Right.
So,
And glad you said that. Ultimately, because I know this was a concern that everyone had when we first talked about this. If money is not spent as well as it can be, it's the five of us who are going to draw that fire from the public, and rightfully so, because we are ultimately the responsible parties for the money. But with that also said, there's a lot of things that go into us figuring what best value is. Sometimes saving a few bucks
it's not
for the first 2 months of the year
right.
is not the best value if they can raise their prices 3 months down the road. Or if it becomes such a hassle to get that you can't get the product at all. We all know this. And so the changes made in this document is you'll see when you read it, ultimately that determination is still going to reside with this commissioner's court. This is designed to help build the framework to make everybody's lives a little easier getting there, and to make sure that department heads and whoever it is might know what the expectations are for something before they bring it to court, and to help make sure that we're doing the due diligence to get the best value.
And a lot of those purchasing agents have put in a lot of time to determine how much money they spend putting out a bid, which I don't think we've really ever done. But if you add up Nancy's hourly rate times everything she's done, I think she spends a lot, no offense, a lot of county money doing what we need her to do. So there might be a better way to do it. And I'm not saying there is or isn't. I'm just saying there are options that we haven't been aware of, and that we don't have a person who's sitting there who can search out those options for us. And I just want to let you know.
Yeah. Thanks for going
No
to the
problem.
conference, and glad for the report from it. So here were the three biggest issues that came up that these changes address. One was something I've already mentioned, which is who's the ultimate authority on purchasing decisions and expertise. Second one was, what do we do outside of normal hours, or if time is paramount and a purchase needs to be made and the purchasing agent's office is closed? I know that was a big concern that was brought up. And then the final was the actual mechanics of when do we get quotes, who gets them, how do we get them? Those were the three biggest things that we spent the most time on when we had this discussion back in the spring. And so if y'all are good with it, I'd like to just walk through the changes that were made to address those three areas. And feel free to jump in, ask questions. Mickey, if you've got any thoughts or anything to add to on this, please feel free to.
Well, I was pretty opinionated during the meeting.
So the first one was the question on the ultimate authority on purchasing decisions. If you'll pull up your document in 6.1, I nearly knocked the coffee over,
But you did.
but I didn't.
There's still time.
Thank you for that, Margaret.
I'm just saying.
It's on page 17, but 6.1 is talking about judgment for the purchasing agent on. If you go down to the third paragraph, it says, on occasion, the judgment of the purchasing agent will not coincide with the judgment of the person making the requisition request. While every effort will be made to accommodate differences, the ultimate decision must lie with the purchasing agent unless appeal is filed with the Commissioner's Court. First, I don't think this is going to be an issue that comes up very often. We have a good purchasing agent in place. Everyone realizes that we're all pulling in the same direction as a team for the county. I think they can probably work through issues 99.9% of the time. 0.1% of the time where that's not the case. If Brendan, I'm not throwing you under the bus, but we'll throw Brendan out there. Brendan just can't get there on what he thinks that a recommendation should be or what he's wanting to ask the court for. Purchasing agent disagrees and making a recommendation. He can appeal that to the commissioner's court and we make the final say on it. If it's over 5,000, we'd have to make the final say anyway, but I'm talking about for things that fall underneath that $5,000 threshold.
Well, walk me through an example of that.
Okay. So Brendan goes out, again, just using you as an example. Brendan goes out and wants to buy a laptop and he has the specifications that he needs for the laptop, and the cost of it's going to be $2,500. If he goes out and he gets 3 quotes, or he goes out and gets 2 quotes, and one of them is $2,600, the computer looks like this, one of them is $2,300 and the computer a little less on that, and he's wanting to get the PO to purchase it. It doesn't have to come before Commissioner's Court right now, right? It's less than $5,000. There's a disagreement, and the purchasing agent's like, you know what? No, the $2,300, the computer that we're doing, and I'm not issuing a PO unless it's for this $2,300 one. At that point, he says, no, the $2,600 one is actually what we need and is the best value. He can appeal that to the Commissioner's Court to be the final arbiter and to say, purchasing agent, you have to issue the PO.
But why would you ever interject a person with no expertise whatsoever into the equation?
Well, because right now, if he wanted to, we're asking him in this document, and we haven't gotten there yet, but we're saying we strongly recommend you out and get quotes for something. And he's got to get a purchase order, which to make the purchase, there's got to be an entity ultimately responsible for issuing the POs. And again, I don't think that this is ever going to be an issue because you have a purchasing agent who, I don't think they're looking at their job to micromanage every spec of everything that he does. But if they fundamentally disagree on before whether or not to issue the purchase order.
If they're not double checking everything, they're not doing their job. If Brendan gave them 15 items and they were every item under $5,000, if she didn't double check, she would never know that. She could never get to the equation you just gave us if she's not checking. But she then ultimately, Brendan could say, well, the XYZ on this 249P is, I'm needing it because of the KWs or whatever. Yeah. Well, she has no clue of that, but he's just been delayed in the whole process because he's trying to inform someone that if she's not doing her job, she slowed the equation.
So let me turn it around then on something that's not a matter of subject expertise. What if we have someone who over and over is making purchases less than $5,000? It's clearly not the best value, or they are refusing to go out and get quotations from someone else. Right now, this court never sees that and doesn't really have the oversight capability to make sure that we're getting the best bang for taxpayer buck. That's what the policy is designed to address. Brendan was probably a poor example because, again, I brought up the IT subject matter expertise. But there are some things that don't require a ton of subject matter expertise.
Well, I think that we're saying the quotes have to be exact. I don't think we're saying if there's a difference in the specs of a quote, that's different. I think we're saying the exact same thing. This one costs a lot more than this one. If you're going to say, if he comes up and says it's because that vendor's awful and we can't get any kind of support, my personal opinion would be, and I'm not the purchasing person, would be that they would take that into consideration. But I understand what you're saying, but I don't think we're talking about if there's a difference in specs. I think if we're saying the exact same thing, apples to apples, and this is the price difference, and that was the impression I got that policy was meant for.
One of my frustrations is probably too strong a term. But again, as I laid out at the top, one of my goals in initially desiring for us to go down this path was oftentimes, it appeared to me that we weren't always going out and getting quotes to double check that we were getting best value. There are some, I think by and large we do a good job of that, but there were times where I would ask, or I'd see something on the agenda and would just ask the question, did we go out and price this at all? And the answer was no. Now, sometimes that was because it had been priced out 3 or 4 months before we knew that it was the best value. We're not trying to overly impair and make us delay things unnecessarily, but there were some times where we just weren't going out and getting quotes. And one of the things that I wanted to see us do was to have an expectation established for departments that if it's over a certain dollar amount, and this one has $250, but we can talk about that. Let's establish the expectation that we're going to go out and try to price some things to see if we are getting the best value or not. Because right now I don't know that expectation exists, and that's ultimately what the goal of this was to do.
Does the best price go so far as a mail order, an Amazon?
Yeah, I think it does.
Okay.
I have a question.
I'm sorry.
So, like, on our vehicles, the equipment we put on the vehicles, they come along to see Patrick on a regular basis, and they're displaying, they bring a vehicle that's got all kinds of lights and sirens and stuff. And there's Willen and there's Defense. There's quite a few that come by to do sales pitch. And so we kind of have an idea which one we want based on what we see and how well it works. Will we still have to go back through the bid process on that, or we just say this is the company we want to use?
Well, I mean, right now, there are purchases that are having to come before the court anyway for approval.
Yeah, I mean, it's over 5,000 obviously, but we've already narrowed down which piece of equipment we want to put on that vehicle.
I think,
May not always be the best price, but it's maybe the best equipment.
Chief, I would think my answer to that would be, like it is now to a large degree, but especially moving forward, would be when you come to court to ask for it, be able to not prove it up, but show that you guys, here are the 2 quotes from different things, or here are the 2 vendors that came on this. We are asking the court to approve this vendor, and then be able to prove it up. I think historically, from what I've noticed, the members of this court aren't going to. We may ask questions, but if y'all have good reasons for why you chose something, I don't know that I'd be too overly concerned about how this is going to
So I guess my question is, do we just bring it to court, or we have to run it through the purchasing agent first?
Well, you would have to run it through the purchasing.
You run it through the purchasing agent first. Part of that would be just to make sure that it's going to be less of an issue if it's a vendor we've worked with before, but to make sure that Melvin can attest to this as well. The amount of forms and vendor things that we have to get now legally seem to increase every legislative session, and that's not even including what the feds require of us. So part of the purchasing agent's job, and I think the main job in something like this here, is going to be to help y'all make sure that we get all the forms, we get everything in that we need to do business with them. But it would be running through them, again, not to impair you, but to help you, and then bring it to court. Yes, sir.
So I think, kind of drill down on what he's saying. Say that we've decided that Wheeling is by far the best. It's the integration, the way it works with the other units, everything, apples being apples, comparing Wheeling to Sound Off to Code 3 or whatever. We decided Wheeling's it. Okay. So if what you're saying, if I'm hearing you right, is that I can go out to 3 different vendors and only get quotes on Wheeling products. I don't have to go out and get 3 quotes for one for Wheeling, one for Sound Off, one for Code 3.
That's correct.
Okay.
If
So
you
we just
set
stick
your
with the
spec-
individual vendor because we choose it, even though I will admit Wheeling is a little more expensive than the other guys, but they put out a very quality product, very bright lights, the way it integrates with each of the units, it's worth the money. And I can come up here and stand here and tell you what the benefits are of using Wheeling versus the Code 3 or Sound Off
They're
products.
the best.
Do
They're the
what?
best in the industry.
They are, they are.
You know, Judge, I see this, you know, purchasing is, and best value is a multi-legged stool. One leg is obviously price, but the other
Right.
two are just as important to balance it on. And we're talking about, I mean, it's easy to go get the price of something. We can do that. We do it all the time, but filling in the blank, case in point, okay, I wanna buy a new motor grader. I've got two brands in town that have dealers, and there's two or three others that we don't have a local dealer.
Yeah, that we might get bought cheaper.
That we could very well get bought cheaper. So where does, you've gotta play, but you've gotta play that into the scenario. Now, if you're talking about a $50,000 difference or a $100,000 difference, that may be one thing, but if you're talking about a $2,000 or $3,000 difference, that might be the price of transporting it down there one time to get service. And to me, that's the price is pretty easy. It's the other legs of the stool that is where we really get into
And I don't,
discussion, yeah.
and that, I mean, I don't see that being, this is really no change from
Yeah.
that now. We have to make those best value, what legs of the stool,
And on a motor grader, we're gonna do it in court anyway.
right.
Because it's over the 5, so, yeah, I don't,
And I agree with your stool deal.
yeah.
And being in the meetings with Cheryl and Jim and talking about this policy doesn't really change the way we do business right now, other than if we want help on it, that department will offer help to whoever's purchasing.
No, you're gonna take the help
You're,
if
well,
you pass the policy,
but if you
because
set your-
Brendan's gonna run every purchase through the purchasing agent
If you
also.
set your specs at such a, if your specs say that it's a Wheeling KYZ, then that, you're gonna get a Wheeling KYZ. No different than if you're gonna get a John Deere or a Cat, whichever one you're wanting. They're not saying that they're gonna reach out and get a Comastic bid on a front end loader. If your specs are, if you're asking for this product, then they're gonna try to find you the best deal on that product.
But I think the one thing it does bring to the table that would be a benefit is it would help us look at all sources. And a lot of times, we probably don't reach out as far as we could. I mean, Margaret just told us
Yeah.
that there's things out there we've not been utilizing.
The end result of this, I think, is that we all, every different department, when they go to their own conferences or whatever, find out about new vendors, and
That's right.
that's great. But then we've also got another entity in the form of the purchasing agent, and that is also, I mean, part of their fundamental job is to be going out and looking for
That's
other
right.
places to
Be
obtain
connected.
things, to be connected.
Be in the loop.
It
Yeah.
is not a getting in the way of, but a adding to or buttressing, that I think is going to add a ton of value. So, yeah.
And that being,
It's certainly a level of organization.
and that what the Jim said being said, it's also under the Commissioner's Court. So I'm telling you, the biggest kickback I see so far is from the commissioners right now and wanting to change that purchasing policy. I don't really take it as wanting to change it so much as to have somebody that's trying to help us handle it, trying to be on the same team as us. That's kind of the way because I went through this every page by page with them, and it seems to be written more to help us than it does change the way we're doing things. But you're going to have to read it page by page to come up with that assessment on your own.
Sure.
Because it all falls back into the commissioners have ultimate control of it, and if we don't like it, we can abolish it just as easy as we passed it.
Well,
So
in reality,
keep
for the
that in
first-
mind.
The first number of years I was here, Willie
I like
Wall
the
was
idea of
the
having a
purchasing
purchasing agent
for
within
the county and for the
within the
commissioner.
commissioner's purview.
And I'll give another example of where it's help and it's not designed to impair. Right now, and Melvin and I were talking about this before court this morning. Right now, when we have to get RFPs drawn up and done, who does those?
We typically do.
Whoever,
Depends.
Sometimes
on the
Nancy
department.
does them. Sometimes the department does them, like the Aramark contract. And sometimes Melvin gets them to review ahead of time before we come before court. Sometimes he doesn't. When there are questions about okay? To make sure that we're complying with the bidding process that we have to do. Any of those questions that come up, you come to Melvin, he researches them and he can get back to them. But there's not a single source that their sole is to get all of that stuff together, work with Melvin, make sure everybody is notified, everything is done. Nancy does a great job of it when she has them, but she doesn't have all of them. And so, again, part of the design is to organize that, help centralize it, not from the standpoint of impairing, but from the standpoint of making sure that we get everything done so that we can move things along quicker to court. Because I think once, maybe twice this year already, we have had to delay action on putting out bids or doing RFPs because, and I'll take the blame for it, I didn't make sure that Melvin got all the documents ahead of time to do a review. And so it pushes it back. You've got somebody who part of their job is making sure that we've dotted all our I's and crossed all of our T's that we have to by state law. I think it just helps move things along and greases those.
No, I love the idea of having a purchasing agent. That's,
Yeah, I think you need an expert for the county. I mean, there's experts for each department, and nothing bad about that, but they need.
but I've worked with good purchasing agents and I've worked with bad ones, and the bad ones that, well, I'm gonna substitute this because it's really in the best
You're in charge
interest.
of it, so
I
there you
have
go.
a hard time with that.
Yeah,
I've done my research and I know what I
Right.
want. I don't need somebody to, well, no, this meets the same specs, so we're buying this instead.
They're gonna work for y'all.
And that's why
so.
it moved
That's-
under the commissioner's purview and not the auditor's purview. And I'm gonna, and I'll say this openly, every once in a while, me and Cheryl have butted heads. But, and that's one thing that this whole thing was written where it would be out from underneath the auditor, where the auditor wouldn't be in control of the
Which
purchasing
was
agent.
always the goal
Always
of
the
this.
goal.
So,
Because
we
I
changed
can't
some
audit
wording on
something
there
I-
for that specifically, where it would be taken away from the auditor and put underneath the commissioners, because the biggest kickback we've had is from this board up here as far as this purchasing policy. So just keep that in mind when
Yeah.
you're reading it.
and I understand, oh, go ahead.
Well, there's generally something that would entice the organization and any organization to move a direction. So can we accomplish savings that is well justified? Do we speed up the process? What are all the advantageous reasons that we would want to do that after? I can only think back for my time, but I can see back 30 years exactly. How does it benefit the organization outside of knowing a PO system is a great system? Because if I was worried, or Mickey's company's worried about cash flow, I've got that commitment, and I understand that. But in my realm, I can think about just a few weeks ago, accident happens with the tractor, and it gets encumbered and tears up. Well, I move, and we've not even seen those invoices. There's an invoice coming for work that's already been done, and insurance is on the hook for as well, commitment, but all of that is done, pulled together, and that's really gonna be outside of a policy to deal with that.
It's not outside of
We're
this.
talking about things that are actually planned purchases is one thing, but unplanned purchases, I see a lot of that going on. My job in as much unplanned purchasing goes on as planned purchasing. Planned purchasing it's great to know where the best value for toilet paper. If I missed a deal I didn't know about, hey, they've got it here, you can get it in this purchasing co-op for $10 a hundred better, and that's great. But not when it's on the fly. It really encumbers what you're needing to do and stay compliant with a written policy.
So, in talking about unplanned purchases, we've addressed that now in this. Were you about to say that?
Yep.
Mickey? Okay.
It's been addressed. You can
Um,
still have control.
Let me find where it is. So if you'll go to 6.9, so on page 20.
Commissioner Van please choose a different terminology than
Kickback.
Pushback.
That's in this policy too.
Yes, it is. Kickbacks are also covered in this
You
policy.
noticed that too, Judge.
It's way down, but it's in there.
Yeah, mark that out, please. Yeah.
So I think we all discussed last time, and it was clear, if we've got a disaster, no one was worried about that. The county judge declares a disaster, I can authorize the purchasing payment. But what you're talking about is unplanned emergency purchases, essentially. We put this in to expressly deal with that, which is, it's not an impairment. If you have something come up, or any elected official or department head has something come up, it needs immediate action. It's outside of normal business hours. It's on a holiday weekend, whatever.
Or inside.
Inside.
normal business.
Or even inside normal business hours. Then, if it's inside normal business hours, just contact the
6.7 covers some of that inside business hours.
Which one, Mickey?
6.7.
6.7. Well, one thing, Jeff, and I was thinking as you were saying that, I mean, we're talking about, I've got a motor grader blocking a road, electronics have gone down, the battery's shot. You need to put a battery in it, get it out of there.
Who you
And
gonna
I think
call?
that's what
Yeah.
you're talking
Well,
about. Yeah.
I mean,
And we do that.
with
time
Rick
to time.
in
Yeah.
particular, he might be doing something that's, hey, run to Lowe's and get what you need to finish the job.
And that's
it.
But I don't see how that's accomplished here.
Well, so if it's less than 250, and it says purchasing agent may exercise discretionary action, I would argue that also means that the department head will need to keep them in the loop.
But 250 won't buy you much of anything.
No,
Building
I
supplies.
mean, it won't
It's-
even move
Yeah.
won't move a mobile mechanic
No,
an hour down the road.
no, we need to hire.
Jeff, I did want to say I understand what you're talking about the planned purchasing, but I also want to make sure that you all realize that I'm not trying to pick on any one person, but that anybody in the county can walk across the street and buy a piece of office equipment and not ever price to see if it's $20, $30, $40 cheaper somewhere else, because they don't. My thing is, I always look at this like it's my checkbook, because it is. I'm a taxpayer. But not all employees look at it like that. They look at it like, I need this and I'm just gonna go get it because this is the
No,
quickest way I
I
can
know
go get it
that.
right now. So, I mean, there's a lot of spending going on
No,
that's not
we
being
see that
challenged
too.
in any way.
But there needs,
No,
we
and
need
I'm
to
not
address
saying
it
the
where
money
it's-
amounts are correct or anything,
No.
but if you want there to be a good policy and you guys wanna be in charge of it, then you're gonna have to do some type of policy. Otherwise, it falls back on us and it's just whoever feels like using us.
Well, one of the things I think, one of the big positives of this is it would allow us to reach out further and do a more thorough,
Right.
better job of researching the real thing. We live in a world that's expanding, day by day. And as I brought up the mail order deal, I mean, that's an area we really look probably harder at. We all probably do in our personal lives. So there's no reason for us not to do it here. And I think that does. And you know how tough it's been trying to reach out and get bids on road materials. I mean, that's something we really need to do some work on.
no,
And that's an area where a purchasing agent could make contacts and make sure we're looking in the right places. I don't know, I mean, that's positive. And I understand the emergency deals, Commissioner, I really do, because we do run into there. You run machinery, you're gonna have stuff happen. And you're gonna have it happen at 4:30.
And I thought we addressed that somewhere else in here.
well, there's one place that kind of addresses it in annual POs. I had 15 whole minutes to read this thoroughly.
Yeah.
So, but there was annual POs,
Yeah.
which I'm very familiar with using, so correct me if I'm wrong, the way we would do it is we would authorize, say, $2,500 to be spent by a department at Lowe's. And you can go to Lowe's until
Yeah.
you,
And we did talk about POs for everything, Lowe's, Tractor Supply, Atwood, all of our, even Caterpillar or something like that, you could have annual POs that
For each
if something
department.
breaks down, you can call somebody and have somebody there, and it's not like you're waiting for approval.
Yeah, we
And
would
there's
pre-set up
always
those contracts, which allows y'all to move faster, really. If we do in the beginning of the year, set up those contracts, those POs, you're moving faster through the year than doing reactive, we would be proactive.
Well-
And in an emergency, you can do your purchase and submit the PO after so that we can encumber the funds.
Yeah,
We're not
that was-
prohibiting that. We want you to take care of what needs to be
Right.
done.
And that's in this policy, I don't know exactly what pages, though.
As in most things, we'll be a lot better equipped to have this discussion 6 months into this than we are today. You'll know real-time challenges, and I think that's something we should always do, is go back and address and look at how is it actually working. Are we accomplishing what we set out to accomplish, and what are the bottlenecks?
And I think one way we can accomplish that, Commissioner, is heck, we can put a sunset date in the policy that forces the court to go
Relook.
back, relook at it. If that's something that the court wants to do, we certainly can do it.
Well, I think we ought to review it annually anyway, like we do our investment policy. It's something we should be doing. Our personnel policy, our investment policy, our purchasing, those should all be looked at annually.
Conditions change.
Absolutely.
They absolutely do. And
So, again, it was unfair, and that's on me, and I apologize. It was unfair to y'all to try to have a discussion on something you had 20 minutes at most to look over. And this was not meant to be the full spectrum discussion. We've got a full week and a half before it would be my goal to put this on the agenda for us to discuss and potentially take action on. Read it, get comfortable with it. If you've got real concerns, we can either talk about those.
Next Friday, could we do that?
Well, it'll be
Thanksgiving.
Friday, next Friday. It'll be
You can come here and talk about all you
Yeah.
want.
Well, I'm just saying, if we go
Well,
through,
instead of
if
shopping.
we sit down and go through the agreement and we mark, are we just gonna discuss those markups in regular session?
that was my goal, but if everyone would feel comfortable with one more Friday to discuss those instead, we could do a Friday session 2 weeks from now and discuss it. And then,
maybe we need to write an emergency paragraph.
There
in
is.
There is.
There is,
Yeah.
6.9.
I've not read
A
it
couple of
all.
times.
Oh, okay.
I just
All right. There we
haven't
go.
read it, but
I'll have to read it.
I just,
see.
about those changes, if, highlight some stuff to ask about. It might be good, Jim, to have one more work session.
Well, when we mark it, we can bring some scenarios that we've encountered, and to me, there's a lot of value in that. This is what we faced when this happened, and how will this,
And you can almost we can scenario it quite a bit,
yeah.
but it all boils down to the commissioners have the
Yes.
ultimate authority on it. So,
Well, I wouldn't enact it until we have that office established or at least advertised.
I think it might be wrong, and the court may disagree. I think it would be a good idea to go ahead and put it into place even now before the office is set up, because we do have a purchasing agent position, not as statute lays out, but a purchasing agent position that currently resides in the auditor's office now. I think that going ahead and building the framework to have some real world, real life example to see what we need to change, what we need to fix, would be a good thing before the court decides to actually enact the separate position outside of the.
And
the
we have
auditor's
someone that
office.
already knows the software. Because again, if you hire a new person, then we still gotta train them on the software, the process, so keep that in mind. So,
But, I mean, that's something let's think about and discuss before this, or at this next meeting. I think it'd be good to go ahead and do it before we bring that position online, but y'all may disagree.
I do wanna, there does need to be one edit that I'm aware of. In 5.1, we need to add Form 1295 to the list of required forms. That's for the state, so,
Yeah.
that was brought to my attention, but that doesn't really change the meat of it. It's just
Right.
one more, again, one more required form we were unaware of.
Yeah. One final thing to conclude, to wrap it up.
Judge?
Yes, sir.
Sorry, I do have a question.
Yeah.
So in the spring, when this was talked about, Commissioner Watts brought up a situation, and so did I, about discretionary spending as it relates to the cards. Commissioner Watts had talked about, his guys needing to finish a job and they need 5 bolts. And if I remember correctly, if I misremember, somebody correct me, but his foreman couldn't just drive to the electro hardware store and buy 5 bolts and carry on if the electro hardware store wasn't already a part of our network or people that we use. And also, my scenario was when our guys go to training and we give them credit cards, we give them a blank card, and then we give them gas cards. Now, the gas cards that are specific to stations, yes, obviously we have an agreement with them. Let's say you go to a town where you can't find one or one's not readily available. If I remember correctly, I was told that if they wanted to use the blank card at a gas station that wasn't already pre-approved, they would have to wait for permission from the purchasing agent to use that card at that station so they could drive home. Is that discretionary fund, is that addressed, or am I misremembering?
Go ahead, Gerald, you would say something?
I mean, I don't remember, honestly, and I've slept since then on that, but in my thoughts, that would, I almost qualify as an emergency, and you would just file the PO when they get back for the
Okay.
funds. I wouldn't think stranding anyone on the side of the road or in any town would qualify as you gotta wait for the PO, but
And
that's my,
so you talk about the blank card.
Just the general sheriff's
They
office
have
card.
3 debit cards. They have a sheriff's office card,
Okay.
a training card, and a transport card. So depending on who they send out, the transport will have transport cards. If someone has training, they'll have a training card, and then Robin has a card she keeps in the office for their general purchases. But I did want to say what you said about the electric hardware store is going to hold true whether we have a policy or not. They can't go right there and get it if they're not our person unless they have a credit card on them, which road and bridge guys at this time do not have. They have a card that they were issued that the court allowed to get their car tags, and that's it.
right, but
So
the,
if you wanted to use it for something else, I think you just have to clarify in a court order that we now want to use
right,
our $200 card for miscellaneous parts.
right, and that solves that whole problem, and then you just file a PO or.
And then you could go to.
Well, right
any
now,
store.
we just go to whatever store. I mean, if we need something, we're just gonna go to the store and buy it.
Right.
If we're working on a tractor and it breaks and we're putting it back together and I need to run the hardware store and get it, I'm still gonna go to the
Right,
hardware
but
store
we
and
know
get it.
where all your people
Right.
are, we could try to preset that up, but
Yeah.
you have a debit card, then the court can deem to allow purchases with the debit card, so whoever in your precinct has it can just run to the store.
And the only issue with that is you don't want to use that at a store we have an account with, because they're going to charge you sales tax. That becomes a whole other issue.
Right, which
That's the
we're,
point of having these accounts with these little places, little mom and pop places, and the bigger places. Because if you just go and use your credit card because you can't find anything, I understand it's an emergency, great, that's fine, we'll take care of it. But you don't want to just get used to being like, oh, let me pop my card out, because you're going to get charged tax on it. Every once in a while, you'll find a vendor who will say, well, you work for the county, we'll go ahead and give you your tax ID number, and they won't charge tax. But that's getting far and few between nowadays.
well, that's because those businesses are being audited by the
Right.
state as well, and they have to have those sales tax and resale tax forms on file, or
And
they
we
get
can't
to
just
pay
give-
the
yeah,
tax.
We can't just give you a tax exempt form because they're vendor specific. So if I don't know you're going to Joe Blow's place of business, I don't have you a typed up tax exempt form for Joe Blow's, place of business.
I think, Chief, on the 2 examples, the bolts, yeah, I mean, if you got something that happens, you go and take care of it, and it's an emergency, and the same I would, and I don't know how, because I know the P cards are set up for specific departments under the county.
Right.
For y'all's, I'm a little less.
They don't have P cards because they have a debit card system.
Okay.
Um,
That would obviously be an emergency that no one's going to push back on.
yeah.
You got to get home.
Right, well, see, I guess that comes down to your interpretation of the word emergency.
And that's what we talked about in that meeting. That's what I was just fixing to say.
To me, that's
There's
the
emergency, court order emergency. There's emergency, but just something being broken, you're trying to get back together, qualifies under emergency
Okay.
from that auditor
Well,
right
then that
there.
clarifies it for me, because,
So,
like I said,
But the
mine.
court can set the definition. and-
Right.
yeah.
And you should. We'll define what that is. But in my mind, that would be qualifying, because
And somebody would need to get home regardless, and if they didn't have their own money, then.
And if, again, heaven forbid, if a fight develop, I can't imagine a purchasing agent being in a position where this fact pattern is put before them and they go, nope, we're not reimbursing you for that, sorry.
Right,
Or-
right, and I'm not suggesting that, but I am saying that it says clearly in the policy that if you use it without prior authorization, you can be prosecuted, and I wouldn't want to see any of our employees prosecuted because he got 10 gallons worth of gas to come home, you know what I'm saying?
And
But under Cheryl's explanation of the word emergency, that makes sense, and that's gonna constitute an emergency.
And again, the new one establishes too, in the event of all of this not being able to come, it's this body that's gonna make the decision on
and
it.
this is going to have growing
Yes.
pains as we tweak it.
But Cheryl, and she said this in our meeting, and this was sort of the genesis behind the whole thing, would love nothing more than to have purchasing out from under them. Because it does put them in a weird spot where they're auditing their own employees for how purchasing is going.
Right.
So,
But we also want this we want this to be successful, so we want this to be set up and trained and moving us all in the correct way without going, oh, that's your problem, don't call me.
yeah.
That's not fair either. I didn't do that with HR when we moved it out of my office, and look how much better that has gone. We didn't just say, here you go, and don't call me. Elections didn't work that way either.
When
And
they
that didn't
left it.
just go, hey, Robin, it's all yours, catch. She had training under that office, and then it was established. And if she has questions, I'm sure Annette will answer. And I think that's where we all want to be. Y'all have questions. We want this to be a collective thing that's moving us forward, getting the best price, the best value, and being compliant. It's a team effort, right? No I in team?
Okay, so everyone that has a chance to read it through, look it over, think on it. But now you've also got the context of what the end goal is here. And when you see some of these things, you go, I don't remember that in spring one. You know, yeah, it wasn't. It's because it wasn't there. We actually added those big pieces to address the biggest concerns that I had heard from the court when we discussed it back in the spring. So, any other questions, comments on this? Yes, sir.
Quantify
Uh-oh.
the today shy of $100 million budget, typically of 70 million less, but with other grants and things, so shy of 100 million. How much money can we expect to save by going to this?
I don't know that we even have the information right now to even be able to quantify
You can't
that.
tell because everyone just buys what they want
Because
to right now.
we don't know. Could it be 1%, which would be $1 million? Probably not. Could it be 100,000, 200,000? I really don't know. But then there's also the issue of because we don't have a centralized person on bidding, for example, making sure, along with our civil attorney, that we're in compliance with everything. What's the cost of somebody filing suit against us because we mess up on a bid?
That's the biggest gain in all this.
Well, but I would ask you in the last 50 years, how many times suit been filed on you for purchasing the way we have done for the last 50 years?
We
It
also
takes
haven't
long.
been as litigious a society for the last 50 years as
True.
we are now. I mean,
Willie
we
said,
never had a courtroom get destroyed by a flood either, but
Willie said something Monday night that stuck with me. It irritated me. I could see somebody saying it. Previous to Gossip, I can't remember which judge it was, wouldn't buy or refuse to make offer on the Atria building. Because he said all that's gonna happen is we're just gonna fill it up with other employees. I don't want to do something that we're just adding a new layer and a new role, that role's gonna grow because in lots of instances, I know on things that I've served, that as soon as, and I'll just say, a teacher gets very busy, guess what the first thing they need is help. And guess what? After a little bit of time, the helper needs help. And so now I've got an expanded, and
Yeah, we get a purchasing agent with no backup, they go on vacation and our whole system's shut down.
So I guess, sorry, I'll let you finish.
but so I just want to know there's extreme value, and extreme value to me comes in the high dollar purchases that we have always taken extremely seriously about as to what we're doing. I don't know that $1 million or $500,000 is going to be saved in janitorial supplies and toilet paper in the size of our operation. Whether I buy a Caterpillar dozer that's $400,000 versus a John Deere, yeah, that makes a big, that there is some money savings there. But so I just don't want to be growing something that, heck, everybody else has one, so why shouldn't we have one? Well, there's a very excellent case for why we haven't had one. I mean, I don't know, it's not that we're state of the art operating, that's by no means occurring, but we are operating, and we are operating fairly.
No, I think you can say we're operating well.
Yeah.
Yeah. I guess there's a couple of responses. I think that is a great question, and probably the question for us to ask on just about anything we do. That are we adding more? Did you want to say something?
When you finish your.
Okay. Are we going to be causing this to kind of get its own momentum of growth? The inertia of growth is just not the inertia of growth. Growth is just going to happen. Then we want to avoid that. I guess I would say two things. Number one, this policy, if we decide to adopt it, doesn't have to accompany more people. This could theoretically be an adoption of something that just governs how we are doing it now, while it stays under the auditor's purview. That would not be her preference. That would not probably be my preference, but that is an option that the court can take. They don't have to create a brand new entity. That is a decision that this court can make. The second thing would be is that on a lot of these cases, Commissioner, I'm worried that our notion of trying to stop the growth of government at the local level is not completely up to us. It's decided by people in Austin, and it's decided by people in Washington, D.C. And if they, similar to on elections, if they keep adding more and more rules, more and more requirements, more and more things that we have to adhere to, we're going to have to be drug kicking and screaming to comply with that anyway, and it's probably going to involve more people at some point. Ultimately, those are going to be decisions that this court's going to have to make every single time that it comes up with. Your question about what value it's adding is a good one. Will we be able to get a numeric value on that? I don't know. But I do think it would be good for us to have the set of expectations established, so that it's not just in one person's head, which is, I think, where we are now. Your question's a good one, and it's one that we should be thinking about and considering over these next weeks as we take this up. But yes, ma'am.
Thank you. As far as quantifying, Commissioner Watts, let me give you an example without any names. I will tell you that the county is approximately 45,000 in population. The purchasing there, when they started looking into it, the inmates were being fed fresh salmon. They were having ice cream sundaes. The cost per meal was almost, or the price per day was over $11 in feeding inmates, okay? when it was cut back and good pricing and good policy was put into play, that county saved about $55,000 on just inmate food. And then other things were found within that sheriff's department and within that jail, in that an administrator was putting purchase orders in, and they had a PO system, but they were putting purchase orders in just right below the limit. And the Commissioner's Court had said, you're not supposed to be buying uniforms this year. Well, they were flying under the radar because every PO was $970 or $980, and they were replenishing uniforms that the court had said, we can't do it this year. It's something we cannot afford. So, to your question, I think it's going to take time for you to have a good number as far as what it's spent. But I think one of the most valuable things is the convenience and having, you talked about emergency purchases, okay? I was part of the planning team in Erath County after Chris Kyle and Chad Littlefield were executed. And we had 9 different law enforcement agencies that came together to be able to hold that trial. What we did is we had what we called anticipated purchasing, meaning that between those 9 organizations, we knew that we were going to have rental for the tents. We were going to have a way to get people in and out because there wasn't a sally port. The logistics there were unbelievable. So we had, I think, best from memory, about 15 to 17 pre-negotiated contracts with people that we knew that we might have to have something for. But then there comes the call. And anyone who's worked with me for any length of time knows that everybody's got Janet's cell number, okay? So I get a call at about 10:30 one night, Janet, our foreign reporters, and we had a slew of them, are trying to follow our jurors home. What do I do? The response was, do what you need to do and we'll take care of the money tomorrow. And that's exactly what any good auditor is going to tell you. Do what you have to do for the safety of these people. There were things that we planned for, things that, for example, for commissioners, you plan for debris removal. That way, when you guys have an emergency, you can already pick up the phone and know that ABC Company's got you covered. So go through your scenarios. Know that ultimately it has to be a team effort. You've got to share your expertise so that all of those open POs can be set up. So,
Thank you.
you're welcome.
I have one more thing.
Yes, ma'am.
I just want to say, not to point anybody out, that I only worry about things like we don't have time to be full purchasing, and there are people in this county that pay people's employees' spouses, that pay the actual employee to do jobs and to do work that are not bid out and asked if anybody else could do it. And I do believe that is highly not okay, and there's no way for us to be able to, I mean, it's already done by the time we get the bills. I mean, so I want to make sure things like that don't happen and we don't get in trouble for things like that, because that's not, you're not supposed to do that.
The final word, unless someone's got something. One other advantage that's probably not numeral, can't be quantified in numbers, is a level of transparency and ability for us to be able to, when the public, taxpayers, their dollars, ask, how can I be sure that y'all are really on top of this and making sure that our money's being spent well? Right now, it's a little harder for me to answer that to the ability of, I can point you out, here's the person, here's the team, here's how we know that's happening. I think that is an advantage here, of being able for the taxpayers to know they've got one place, that the expertise, that's their whole job, is to make sure that that's being done correctly. And that entity is answerable to us. And so we can have the confidence that that's going well. But that's it for me. Anyone else? I'm not trying to move it along too quickly,
But we need to move along.
yeah.
Yeah, it needs to move along, because we haven't had a chance to digest it at all, so.
Okay. And again, my
Okay. No,
apologies
that's
to,
no
to,
problem.
to,
No
to y'all
problem.
for
We'll
that.
be better equipped to discuss in a
Yeah.
couple of weeks.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, thank y'all for that. Then let's go to item number 1. Did I see? Yeah, that's here. Canvass and take necessary action on the election results of the November 7th, 2023 constitutional amendments election. Ms. Fincannon.
I'm gonna give you about 30 seconds to digest this, so.
Here we go again.
Take one
And then we're gonna
pass
digest lunch.
it down.
Oh, sorry. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And this is just the constitutional amendment because we are not responsible for canvassing.
The city,
local
correct. I
election.
think
one
the
past there.
cumulative does have the city results on it, but the precinct by precinct is just the amendments.
Take one of each.
Is this- These are 2-paged, Robin?
Some are 3 pages, depending
Oh,
on how
okay.
many
Okay.
you see. Some of them are 3 pages.
Is there a tally page?
That's coming to you right
Okay.
there. So, and she, just so, and Robin, please start.
Uh-huh.
Election code requires for a canvass that the tabulation has to be both of these, by precinct and by the sums. So that's why we've got all of this paper.
Yes. Precinct is lengthy and the other is a shorter tally. And then I did give you a reconciliation.
No, you printed out the precinct.
Yes.
Just looking at it, we have to do that, so.
Yeah, it is.
But
It's a lengthy report, but there's nothing, I can't make it shorter.
Five people left with their printed ballots.
Yes.
they just walked out the,
I think out of 11,645 is not too shabby, but
Yeah,
Yeah,
especially
you
considering how busy some of those
Yeah.
places were.
I know when I was at Home Depot, the poll worker caught the lady, but she literally folded it in half again and stuck it in her bag. And he caught her and she was like, "You didn't vote."
Didn't
But they
realize.
just, yeah, I think people just don't. I think the mall found one in the trash can, in the bathroom. And then I think there was another one that, the guy left before he even finished, cause he wasn't interested in finishing it, so.
the, Robin, the 11,640.
40. Mm-hmm.
What is that? What makes that difference between 675 and 640?
675 is what was, the difference is the 30 and the 5 voters. 30 is, we had 28 mail ballots that we rejected because they either didn't put their ID on there, they didn't put the last 4 of their social. Some reason, we had to reject 28 of the mail ballots that we actually got back in. We did have to reject 2 of the provisional, so the 30 and then the 5 people that are erroneously, we were actually off 6, but we added 1 because we had a correction on a paper ballot. So technically 6 people left with the ballot, but it only shows us to be 5 off.
So 30 rejected ballots plus 5, they checked in to vote, but their paper never made it into the scan.
Correct.
But
Correct.
yeah, it wouldn't have changed the balance of any of
Not
it.
6 votes on any race at all.
Because you even figure that percentage.
Mhm.
When a mail ballot or provisional ballot's rejected, who makes the determination?
Ballot board makes the determination on the mail ballots and the provisional.
That's what I thought.
And on the mail ballots, y'all actually give them an opportunity to
Yeah,
correct any problems.
Yes, we send them, they have 6 days to correct it, they have until the 13th, until 5 o'clock on the 13th, so we send them a letter, or we call them, or if we can have an email, we'll email them. I don't think we have any
Did some
emails.
people fix
We
them?
did have some people
Oh.
come in, yeah, we had some people show up in person. We did get a few of the letters back in time, and then we were able to correct those, but the rest of them, we still have some that we've never heard from them, so. And we have a lot of ballots that.
We've never seen this kind of sheet before. This is the
Oh.
first
This is
for
new.
us to see.
We had 116 mail ballots that they never even sent the ballot back in, so I think once they got it, they either didn't wanna vote or
Lost.
they
Forgot.
lost interest or
Yeah.
forgot or
Lost
misplaced it, or who knows, yeah.
They started.
Or it
reading
might
that
show up
and
6
then
months
get
from now,
yourself-
I don't know.
Yeah.
The mail,
Well,
yeah.
when the president.
So they would be counted, they would be counted
We've
as
never
voted
received these
because they were
from
sent
each
a,
other.
They were sent a ballot,
So-
but we never received a
yeah,
ballot, correct? So they
so
showed
our
up.
number of voters is one thing versus the number of actual votes cast.
Yes.
That's the difference.
Yeah, yeah, but the actual mail ballots sent were 364, but 116
Yeah,
of
they're
them,
supposed to
we
Did
never
not.
even got back,
So
so.
you counted 221 mail ballots.
221, the 221 includes a limited ballot. We had one limited voter, and that is somebody that is in a residing county. Clay County, for example, they have recently moved to Wichita. They are registered in Clay County. They can vote on amendments only,
Okay.
because they could have voted on amendments in their county. So instead of saying you have to drive back to Clay County, you truly live in Wichita now, we've moved their registration to us effective the day they do the limited ballot. So they are a Wichita County voter, they're registered in Wichita County now, but they can vote, they can't vote on anything local.
Okay.
So same thing with, when it's the presidential, they can vote on things that are statewide, but they cannot vote on anything that is specific to the county that they are voting in, their new county. So we did have one limited, but that was all we had for this one.
What was your experience with poll workers? Did you have enough?
Man, we could have used some more because nobody thought this was gonna be as busy as it was on election day. There was a few times during early voting, a few locations, Home Depot, the mall, were super busy. But election day, I think, was a little overwhelming for several of the locations, because it was a good turnout, heavy in certain areas. You know, I have other places that didn't see near the traffic. But yeah, it was a little, we could have stood to have some more in a few places, so.
We need to be reaching out and getting ready for that in the future.
And we could have had more
Yeah.
machines at some of the locations. that
Yeah.
Yes,
needed more.
yeah, that's the goal next year. I would really like to deploy more machines. I don't have the cages currently to do that. Hint, hint, I'll be back. But,
Growing government.
exactly. But you know, 5 or 6 duos at one location. I mean, I can do I think I can do a string of 10 off of one controller, and I don't know why we're not doing that. If I have the room at the location,
Cut down the lines.
just the more people you can get voting at one time, the better. So, and usually your holdup is the people voting. It's not the controller, it's not the poll pad.
And this one was,
So-
it took some time for people to go through and.
Yeah,
read
because they had to
those
read them.
constitution.
Yeah.
And
I
next
was
year will take a
watching the
while
line.
because there'll be more on there too. So.
I particularly went and just sat outside the polling area and watched it at the last hour of the voting, just to see
Yeah.
how it was going, and it was backed up.
Yeah.
And we could have probably used some more machines, but
Yeah.
in the particular location I was watching, I don't know if we had room, that's another
We
consideration.
are gonna look at that.
Yeah.
I'm gonna meet with the Republican Democratic chair because there's a couple of locations that are, they're not conducive to that, they're not conducive to good parking.
Yeah.
So we're gonna
That's
have
another
to try to,
challenge.
we're gonna have to look at a couple of things this
And
next
that's
year.
becoming more of a challenge every time we do it,
Internet
because we've
service.
lost, we used to use the schools, now that's off the deal.
Yeah.
We've got churches kind of beginning to push back a little bit because of the way things are, and
Right.
it has to be handled, so,
And we
Right.
have some businesses pushing back because of the way they're being treated by
Yes.
the public.
yeah.
It's
So-
hard to find locations.
Yeah, it
It's
is.
getting tough, that's
It
gonna be a
is.
consideration.
Yeah.
Robin,
So.
I see the total number of voters. In Wichita County, we're right at 80,000.
No, we're right at 77.
And
77, well, it's less than that now, but it was
so
77. when this
knowing
was
that
ran.
we're a population of 130, and then some of those are gonna be children. What is out there to not be registered?
What do you mean?
Looked at that? How many more are we able to register?
Who's in the gap? And
Yeah,
in the
I
gap?
don't have any idea on that.
Well, you got
Yeah.
university students
Demographic
and Shepherd
thing,
Air
I don't
Force
know.
Base that wouldn't be
And the state
resident.
actually tracks the registries, and you can go back and see, and we've actually lost registered voters, like, it wasn't even 10 years ago, we had like 84,000, and now we've got 78, so
Yeah.
what explains that? Well, I think our generational gaps are changing that. We've had those die hard, go vote no matter what. That generation is, passing on. They're passing on.
Yeah.
We do have a large transient
Whereas
population.
our younger voters are not registering to vote. They either don't understand the value or see the value or just don't
You got 130,000 people and you got 77,000 guys, you take the underage, the children out of that, that's not terrible, really. I mean, that's.
And that's great and all to have 77,000 registered, but your turnout is your problem.
Their turnout is
That's the
still always gonna be a
11,640 out of 78,000.
Yeah.
So we're in what, 12%?
It's 15%.
15?
That's better than it has
Which is
been.
the state average, actually, for
That's
this
sad.
election.
And it is better than it has been.
Yeah.
Robin, have you all done your manual counts that the state requires?
We are finishing up on, we have done election day already, and it was perfect. The 3 locations we had to manually count was TxDOT, 10th and Broad, and MLK, and those are done. And then we are having to vote, you have to go through every bag during early voting.
Do you mind reminding the court of what is entailed with that process?
Okay, the state of Texas tells you what 3 precincts you're going to count and what race you're gonna count. So we are counting Prop 4, in case you're wondering, for precinct 103, precinct 202, and precinct 401. So for MLK, what we have to do is we have to open the ballot bag, we have to take every ballot out of there, and we have to find 103, 202, 401.
Wow.
And we know exactly how many we have to find because it's broken down on this report, because we can do a custom report, so I know exactly how many I need. And then we have to, once we find all those, the rest go back in the bag, then we have to do a manual tally of how many for, how many against, and make sure that it matches what the system spits out. So we do that for the 3 locations on election day, but during early voting, it's not by location. It's early voting across the board. So we have to open every bag for every early voting location.
To find those specific precincts?
To find those specific, yes. So like we haven't done Home Depot yet, we just finished the mall. You know, out of the however many votes there were at the mall, I feel like there was 5,000. There wasn't, but that's what I feel like. For precinct 202, there was like 47 I had to find. For precinct 401, there was, 197 that I had to find. So, but there's no magical way to do it other than literally flipping through every ballot.
Wow.
So, and we haven't done them all. We haven't done Home Depot yet. We saved that one for last.
And you said you have finished election day and the
Election day
numbers
was
matched
perfect.
up?
Election day was perfect. And say we have one location left for early voting.
For the citizens, that means that the machine was 100% perfect to
Yes.
the actual paper ballots
Yes,
that they
they were
would
manually
retrieve
counted.
out of the box.
Yeah.
To me,
Exactly.
that's a huge deal for the citizens to realize.
Yeah, and we're matching it up, like we know, Electra already matched, because I know exactly how many Electra had. We've matched up exactly how many Burke had for early voting. We've matched up exactly how much every location. The only thing is, we haven't finished them all, and we haven't even started Home Depot, so we'll finish it today.
And the state tells them
Yes.
which ones they have to pull out to
Correct.
make sure that
What?
they don't know, and then
Why wouldn't we choose one of our own at random too, just to double check?
We could add, you can add
I
one
mean,
in
if you're
or-
gonna have to go
in
through
your-
every one, why not
Yeah,
pick, why not,
The-
why don't we
the
just
state
do a lottery
dictates.
and pick one?
yeah, the
and-
state dictates 3 precincts and the race.
Yeah.
But you could add whatever we deemed.
But Robin, when you get wrapped up with that, and you should walk someone like Lynn Walker through the process to
Yeah.
let him
Yeah.
identify to everyone, because this is really,
Yeah.
this is good info, and this is,
Yeah.
like I say, this may have been an option for a long time. We've just never seen that before, and it really lays it out well for you
Yeah.
as to what's going on.
Walking Lynn through it, I think that should be opened up to the media.
Yeah,
You know,
all
any
media.
media that
Oh,
wants
yeah,
to come
just
and look
have
at
a
it.
Have a
Yeah.
press
Press
conference.
conference and go do it. I think that's
Yeah.
great.
It's nice to let
It's
the
not
people
over with
know.
election days
No,
over, that's for sure.
I think we all want transparency
Yeah.
at its utmost.
And that's a story the press would be interested in,
Yeah.
especially with everything that's going on in the world right now.
Yeah.
It's a great story. I'd be surprised they wouldn't want to cover that. What about machines in general? Did they perform well?
We had one controller at one place that I do think it's a connection issue. Nothing wrong with the machine itself, but we tried different plugs. We unplugged, replugged, brought new plugs, and it just would never connect. So it's gotta be something in the connection, which will probably end up having to go back for repair. Machine turned on, worked great, but the other machines just couldn't read it. It's like it didn't exist. That was at Faith Lodge on Kemp. So we had to swap out the controller because their controller, say, it did not work. So the scanner was fine though.
There was some talk on some social media sites
Mhm.
that machines jammed regularly and people didn't receive training that they were supposed to.
We had some spoiled ballots that were due to jamming. I don't think out of that many votes, wouldn't even call it an issue. Because, you know, if it doesn't print correctly and it jams, they have to spoil it and put it in an envelope. Mhm. I don't have a ton of those, so it probably did happen, but
I would expect for it to happen
not-
occasionally.
yeah,
I mean,
not
it's machinery
near
is machinery.
the volume that
Sure.
it made it sound to be, so no.
Okay, and
So-
there's another discussion going around the community that there was some anomalies at one of the polling locations.
I know of one issue where the lady was given the option to vote provisionally. When she should have been able to vote regularly, she just needed a statement of residence to change her address. But she did get to vote, she just had to vote different way than normal. And her vote did count. I've already sent her a letter stating that her vote counted.
That was on a provisional
on the
ballot.
back end.
So
But
She
it
had
was-
moved with
but-
inside the district, I think.
Yeah, she'd moved a couple streets over, I think, honestly, it wasn't even very far. A couple streets over, but instead of doing a statement of residence, letting her vote regularly, they for whatever reason, opted to do provisionally. You know what, it's a long day, these people are human. We had 120 statement of residence that came in, so one out of the 120, I don't feel like it's a,
But her
It
vote
was a
still
fluke,
was.
and her vote still counted.
It was
Yeah.
collected and counted, it was just
Collected
collected
and
and counted in a
counted.
different method. than-
correct.
than-
And I spoke to the one I'm talking about
Okay,
personally, so.
is that Region 9
Yes.
location? Okay.
Yes, yeah, so, but yeah, we had 120 statement of residence turned in across the board, so it was, I think it was just a fluke. It was a judgment call at the time, and saying she didn't not get to vote,
Okay,
so, just voted different.
very good.
All right.
Sounds like everything was handled well.
We will need to take action on this item, court, so.
Motion to approve the canvas.
Second.
We have a motion to approve the canvas by Commissioner Mahler, seconded by Commissioner Watts. Do we have any other questions or comments on the motion or the item? All right, the motion is before us. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries 5-0.
Robin, great job, and I want to commend you. I know you put in a lot of time, over and above and beyond, so we
Lot to be
appreciate
grateful.
that. We had that discussion yesterday of finding people that just have a passion to do what they do, and so you're
Yes.
one of those.
Having gone through this, I would still work in election. Whether I was here or not, I'd still be volunteering to work in election, so, yeah.
All right,
So-
thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, with that, it is 11:45. Let me make sure I didn't miss anything. Hold on. Okay, it's 11:45.